Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the navigation screen. The USS Horizon had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, exploring the far edges of human territory. As the ship's commander, Jake felt responsible for his crew of 32 brave men and women who had volunteered for this dangerous mission. "Captain, we're approaching the nebula," called out Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her position at the science station. Her voice carried excitement that Jake had learned to recognize. Amy loved discovering new things, and this purple and gold cloud of gas stretched across millions of miles of space. Jake nodded and walked over to look at her readings. "What do you make of it, Amy?" "It's beautiful, sir. The gas particles are moving in patterns I've never seen before. There might be some kind of energy source inside causing the movement." Amy's fingers danced across her controls, gathering as much information as possible. The nebula did look amazing. Streams of purple and gold gas swirled like paint mixed in water. Jake had seen many strange sights during his 15 years in space, but this was special. "Take us in for a closer look, nice and slow." "Yes, sir," replied pilot Danny Walsh from the front of the bridge. Danny was young but skilled, and Jake trusted him to keep them safe. The ship moved forward carefully, entering the outer edges of the colorful cloud. Unknown to the humans, their arrival had not gone unnoticed. Deep inside the nebula, a Zephyrian monitoring station detected the approaching vessel. The Zephyrians had built these stations throughout their territory to watch for threats. Their empire controlled 12 star systems and had never been challenged by any other species. Commander Vextar studied the readings from his position aboard the battlecruiser Stellar Blade. The Zephyrian was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. His species had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 2,000 years through superior technology and military might. "What kind of ship is this?" Vextar asked his science officer. "Unknown design, Commander. Primitive fusion engines, basic armor plating. The vessel appears to be some kind of exploration craft." The science officer's voice carried the typical Zephyrian tone of superiority. "Their technology level suggests they have only recently achieved interstellar travel." Vextar nodded. The Zephyrians had encountered many younger species over the centuries. Most were easily convinced to join the Empire or were destroyed if they proved troublesome. "Continue monitoring. Alert me if they show any hostile behavior." Back on the horizon, Jake watched as his ship moved deeper into the nebula. The gas clouds were so thick now that the stars disappeared completely. It felt like swimming through an ocean of colored mist. "Captain, I'm detecting some kind of artificial structure ahead," Amy reported, her voice tense with excitement. "It's big, sir, really big." Jake moved to her station and looked at the readings. The structure was massive, easily 10 times larger than any human building. "Can you tell what it is?" "Some kind of monitoring station, I think. The energy readings are incredible. Their technology is far beyond anything we have." Amy looked up at Jake with wide eyes. "Sir, I think we've found aliens." The bridge went quiet. Everyone had hoped this day would come, but now that it was happening, nobody knew what to say. Jake felt his heart beating faster as he realized they were about to make the most important discovery in human history. "Open all communication channels," Jake ordered. "Let's try to make contact." Danny began broadcasting on every frequency the ship could produce. Radio waves, microwave signals, and laser communications all reached out toward the alien station. "Broadcasting now, Captain. Sending mathematical sequences, music, and basic language patterns." The Zephyrians received these signals with alarm. Their quantum communication network, which connected all their ships and stations instantly across light years of space, suddenly began experiencing interference. The human radio waves, designed for simple communication, were disrupting their advanced technology in ways nobody expected. "Commander, we're under attack," shouted the Zephyrian communications officer. "Some kind of viral transmission is corrupting our data streams." Vextar stood quickly, his hand moving to his weapon. "Attack? From that primitive vessel?" "Yes, sir. Their signals are causing cascade failures throughout our network. If this continues, we could lose contact with the entire fleet." Vextar had never encountered anything like this. In 200 years of military service, no enemy had ever been able to affect Zephyrian communications. Their quantum technology was supposed to be impossible to disrupt, yet somehow these crude aliens were doing exactly that. "Prepare weapons," Vextar ordered. "We'll stop this attack before it spreads." The stellar blade powered up its plasma cannons, weapons capable of melting through solid rock. The ship's energy shields activated, creating a protective barrier that had never been penetrated in battle. Vexitar felt confident that these aliens would surrender quickly once they saw Zephyrian power. Jake watched his communication officer work frantically at his station. "Any response, Danny?" "Nothing yet, sir." "Wait, I'm getting something. Energy buildup from the station." "Captain, I think they're powering weapons." Jake's blood ran cold. Humanity's first contact with aliens was about to become a fight. "All stop. Raise shields and prepare for evasive action." The human shields were simple energy barriers, nothing compared to Zephyrian technology. But Jake hoped they might buy enough time to escape if things went badly. "Captain, they're moving toward us," Amy reported. "One ship, much larger than ours. The energy readings are off the charts." Through the nebula's swirling clouds, the stellar blade appeared like a nightmare made real. The Zephyrian ship was sleek and deadly, covered in weapon ports and glowing with power. It moved without sound through the gas clouds, approaching the small human vessel. Vextar opened a communication channel, speaking in the universal mathematical language that most civilized species understood. "Alien vessel, you will cease your attack immediately and surrender. Comply or be destroyed." Jake received the transmission, but his ship's computer couldn't translate the complex mathematics fast enough. All he heard was strange sounds and number sequences that made no sense. "Danny, can you make sense of this?" "Working on it, sir. It sounds like some kind of ultimatum, but I can't be certain." Jake made the decision that would change everything. He ordered Danny to respond with humanity's most basic greeting, a simple radio message saying, "Hello, we come in peace," in multiple human languages. To the Zephyrians, this response looked like another attack. The human languages contained sound patterns that their computers interpreted as viral code designed to crash their systems. Several monitoring stations throughout the nebula began experiencing failures as the "hello" message propagated through their network. "They're intensifying their attack," the Zephyrian communications officer reported. "The virus is spreading to other stations." Vextar had seen enough. These aliens were clearly hostile and possessed weapons beyond Zephyrian understanding. He could not allow them to threaten the Empire. "Fire warning shot. Target the asteroid field to our starboard." The plasma cannon charged with deadly energy and fired. The blast was meant to miss the human ship and hit a nearby asteroid as a demonstration of power. But the nebula's gas interfered with the weapon's targeting system. Instead of hitting empty rock, the plasma bolt struck the human mining station on asteroid 7 Alpha. The mining station exploded in a ball of fire visible even through the thick nebula gas. 47 people died instantly, including Supervisor Danny Walsh's brother and engineer Amy Rodriguez's best friend from the academy. The explosion sent shockwaves through the asteroid field, destroying years of human work in seconds. "My God," Jake whispered as he watched the destruction on his screen. "They just killed our people." Amy was crying as she reported casualty estimates. The mining station had been home to families, workers, and scientists. Now it was nothing but burning metal floating in space. Jake knew he had to make a choice. Stay and fight a hopeless battle against superior technology, or run and warn Earth about this new threat. The choice was easy. "Danny, get us out of here. Maximum speed." The horizon turned and fled through the nebula, racing toward human space with the most terrible news in history. Behind them, Commander Vextar watched the primitive ship escape and felt satisfied that he had taught these aliens a lesson about Zephyrian power. Neither side realized that this tragic misunderstanding would soon lead to a war that would shake the foundation of the galaxy's most advanced empire. 6 months after the tragedy at the nebula, Fleet Admiral Kevin Brooks stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching 20 human warships prepare for their first real battle against alien forces. The ships looked small and crude compared to what intelligence reports said about Zephyrian technology but they were all Earth had to offer. Kevin was 53 years old and had spent his entire adult life in the Space Navy. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile corporate fleets, but never aliens with technology centuries ahead of human science. The weight of representing all humanity pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. "Admiral, the fleet is ready," reported Captain Lisa Carter, who had been promoted after surviving the first contact incident. Her ship, the USS Horizon, now carried extra armor and weapons, but she knew it would not be enough against Zephyrian power. Kevin nodded and activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Brooks. Today we face an enemy that believes humans are weak and primitive. They killed 47 of our people without warning. We're here to show them that humans don't forget, and we don't forgive easily." Throughout, the fleet crews prepared for battle. On the destroyer USS Defiant, Commander Ryan Peters checked his weapons one last time. Ryan was young for a ship commander, only 31, but he had earned his position through skill and courage. His crew trusted him completely. "Sir, we're detecting Zephyrian ships approaching," called out his sensor officer. "3 vessels, much larger than ours." Ryan studied the display and felt his stomach drop. The alien ships were massive, each one bigger than 5 human vessels combined. They moved through space with smooth grace, their hulls glowing with energy that human sensors could barely detect. Leading the Zephyrian force was War Commander Zixnall, aboard the battleship Void Render. Zixnall was a veteran of many conflicts and had never lost a battle. His pale blue skin bore the ritual scars of a warrior, and his black eyes showed no mercy for enemies of the Empire. "Scan the human vessels," Zixnall ordered his science officer. "I want to know what primitive weapons they carry." The science officer, a thin Zephyrian named Cole Enth, studied the readings with amusement. Kinetic projectile weapons, basic energy shields, fusion reactors for power. "Commander, their technology is at least 300 years behind ours. This will be a quick victory." Zixnall felt disappointed. He had hoped these humans would provide some challenge after the strange events at the monitoring station. The Empire's scientists still could not explain how human communications had disrupted their quantum network, but surely it was just a lucky accident. "Open communications. Let's offer them a chance to surrender before we destroy them." The message reached Admiral Brooks in mathematical symbols that human computers could now translate, thanks to months of studying Zephyrian transmissions. "Primitive humans, your vessels are no match for Zephyrian technology. Surrender now, and you will be treated fairly as prisoners of war." Kevin felt anger rise in his chest. These aliens spoke as if humans were children playing with toys. "Send reply. We don't surrender to murderers. If you want to fight, you'll get one." The battle began when Zixnall fired the first shot. A plasma beam reached out from the Void Render toward the USS Liberty, moving faster than human eyes could follow. The beam struck the human flagship's shields and shattered them like glass, sending energy feedback through every system on the ship. Kevin grabbed his command chair as the bridge shook violently. "Damage report!" "Shields down. Hull breaches on. Decks 4 and 5. Weapons still operational," his damage control officer reported. Around the battlefield, other human ships were suffering similar damage. The Zephyrian weapons were incredibly powerful, and their shields seemed to absorb every shot the humans fired back. Within minutes, it looked like the battle would end in complete human defeat. But then something unexpected happened. Commander Ryan Peters noticed that the Zephyrian ships always fired in the same pattern. Target the largest ship first, then work down to smaller vessels. Their movements followed precise mathematical formulas, just like everything else about their civilization. "All ships, this is Peters," Ryan broadcast on the emergency frequency. "They're fighting like computers, not warriors. Their patterns are predictable. Follow my lead." Instead of fighting in formation like human naval doctrine required, Ryan ordered his ship to break away and attack from an unexpected angle. The Zephyrian targeting computers, programmed to expect logical military behavior, took precious seconds to adjust to this chaotic tactic. Captain Nicole Hayes aboard the cruiser, USS Vengeance, saw what Ryan was doing and made an even more desperate decision. All hands prepare for ramming speed. We're going to hit them where it hurts." Her crew stared at her in shock. Ramming was considered a suicide tactic, something only used when all hope was lost. But Nicole had studied the intelligence reports carefully and noticed something important. Zephyrian shields were strongest against energy weapons but might be vulnerable to physical impact. "Captain, that's suicide," her first officer protested. "Maybe, but if we don't try something crazy, we're all dead anyway. Trust me on this one." The USS Vengeance turned toward the nearest Zephyrian ship and accelerated to maximum speed. The BU alien crew watched in amazement as the primitive human vessel charged directly at their shields, which had never been broken in 3 centuries of warfare. At the last second, Chief Engineer Tony Martinez activated the ship's emergency teleportation system, beaming most of the crew to nearby human vessels. Nicole stayed at her post to guide the ship's final moments, her hand steady on the controls as death approached. The Vengeance struck the Zephyrian shield generator with tremendous force. The impact created a feedback loop that overloaded the alien ship's power systems. For the first time in hundreds of years, a Zephyrian vessel lost its protective shields. "Impossible," Zixnall whispered as he watched his escort ship's shields collapse. "No primitive species has ever broken our defenses." But the humans were not finished surprising him. The moment the shields failed, every human ship in the area focused their fire on the vulnerable Zephyrian vessel. Kinetic rounds and energy beams tore through the alien hull, causing massive damage. Other human captains immediately copied the ramming tactic. The destroyer USS Courageous, commanded by Captain Steve Murphy, rammed another Zephyrian ship while its crew escaped in life pods. The cruiser USS Defiant, under Ryan Peters' command, used the chaos to get close enough to launch nuclear torpedoes at point-blank range. War Commander Zixnall watched in growing horror as his supposedly invincible fleet began taking serious damage. These humans fought like madmen, using tactics that made no sense according to galactic military doctrine. They seemed willing to die just to hurt their enemies, showing a level of desperation and creativity that no Zephyrian computer could predict. "Sir, we're losing the escort ships," his tactical officer reported. "The humans are using suicide attacks to breach our shields, then concentrating fire on the damaged areas." Zixnall had never retreated from a battle, but he was beginning to understand that these humans were not like other species. They did not fight with logic or follow predictable patterns. They adapted and improvised in ways that his rigid military training had never prepared him for. "Fall back to the edge of the system," he ordered reluctantly. "We need to report this to the High Command." Admiral Brooks watched the Zephyrian ships withdraw and felt a mixture of victory and grief. The humans had won their first battle against superior technology, but the cost had been terrible. 8 ships were destroyed or badly damaged, and over 300 brave men and women had died, proving that humanity could fight back. "Send message to Earth," Kevin ordered. "Tell them we can hurt these aliens, but we're going to need everything. We have to win this war." As the human fleet regrouped and counted their losses, War Commander Zixnall composed his report to the Dominion Council. His words would send shockwaves through the Zephyrian Empire. The humans fight with impossible unpredictability. They ignore conventional tactics and show no regard for their own survival. Request immediate reinforcements. This enemy is far more dangerous than we initially believed. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that sometimes the most primitive weapons could be the most effective. Human determination, creativity, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Emperor Korthak the Eternal sat on his crystal throne, reading the battle report from War Commander Zixnall with growing disbelief. In his 800 years of ruling the Zephyrian Empire, no enemy had ever forced his fleets to retreat. The very idea seemed impossible. "Bring me Fleet Marshal Dorkhan," the Emperor commanded his servants. His voice echoed through the vast throne room, carved from a single piece of blue stone that had been quarried from Zephyr Prime's sacred mountains. Fleet Marshal Dorkhan arrived within minutes, his military decorations gleaming on his chest. He was the Empire's greatest strategic mind, a Zephyrian who had won 43 major battles without a single defeat. His tactical genius was legendary throughout the galaxy. Your Majesty, I have reviewed the reports from the human encounters, Dorkan said, bowing deeply. The enemy appears to use chaotic tactics that our computers cannot predict. However, I believe this is simply due to their primitive nature. They fight like wild animals because they lack proper military training. Emperor Korthak studied his marshal carefully. And you believe you can defeat them? Without question, Your Majesty. I will take the 7th War Fleet, 200 of our finest vessels, and end this human threat permanently. Their homeworld will serve as an example to any other species that dares challenge our empire. The Emperor nodded slowly. Very well. You have my permission to use any weapons necessary, including the reality warping technology. These humans must be eliminated before they can spread their chaos to other systems. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Patricia Stone stood in the war room deep beneath the planet's surface, studying holographic displays of Zephyrian fleet movements. Intelligence reports showed massive alien forces gathering at the edge of human space, preparing for what could only be a final assault on Earth itself. Patricia was 62 years old and had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. She had studied every military conflict in human history, from ancient sword battles to modern space warfare. Now she would need all that knowledge to save her species from extinction. How many ships can we assemble? She asked Admiral Marcus Bell, who stood beside her reviewing the tactical displays. 80 vessels, General. Every ship we have that can fly and fight. It's not nearly enough against 200 Zephyrian warships, but it's all we have. Patricia nodded grimly. The numbers were terrible, but she had been developing new ideas based on the reports from previous battles. If humans could not win through superior technology, they would have to win through superior thinking. Admiral, I want you to implement Doctrine Chaos immediately. Throw out every rule in the military handbook. From now on, we fight like humans, not like machines. Admiral Bell looked confused. General, what exactly is Doctrine Chaos? It's simple. We do everything the enemy doesn't expect. We break formations, ignore standard tactics, and make decisions that no logical computer could predict. If the Zephyrians fight like machines, we'll fight like the chaotic humans we are. Training began immediately throughout the human fleet. Colonel Steve Murphy worked with his crew aboard the battleship USS Thunderbolt, teaching them to make quick decisions without waiting for orders. Major Lisa Chen trained her pilots to fly in random patterns that would confuse enemy targeting systems. Captain Greg Wilson spent hours with his engineering team, learning to manually override every automatic system on their ship. If Zephyrian computers could predict human technology, then humans would stop using computers in battle. Theory. Decisive confrontation came in the Kepler system, where asteroid fields and gas clouds would provide cover for human forces. Fleet Marshal Dorkan arrived with his massive fleet, confident that 200 advanced warships could easily destroy 80 primitive human vessels. Begin standard attack formation, Dorkan ordered from his flagship, the Eternal Victory. Target their largest ships first, then systematically eliminate the smaller vessels. This battle should be over within 1 hour. The Zephyrian fleet formed perfect geometric patterns, with each ship knowing exactly where it should be and when to fire. Their quantum-linked battle computers coordinated every movement, creating a deadly dance of mathematical precision. Admiral Bell watched the enemy formation and smiled grimly. All ships, remember your training. Fight like humans, not like machines. Begin Operation Madness. The human fleet scattered in every direction like frightened birds. Ships that should have stayed in formation broke away and attacked from impossible angles. Vessels that should have retreated instead charged directly at superior firepower. Captain Wilson deliberately crashed his ship into a nearby asteroid field, using the floating rocks as camouflage. His crew manually aimed their weapons through the debris, firing at random intervals to confuse Zephyrian sensors. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone had her gunners fire their torpedoes while her ship spun wildly through space. The spinning motion made her vessel nearly impossible to target, while her weapons struck enemy ships from unexpected directions. Fleet Marshal Dorkan watched in growing confusion as his perfect battle plan fell apart. What are they doing? Their movements make no tactical sense. Sir, Our computers cannot predict their next moves, his tactical officer reported. They appear to be using random behavior patterns that change constantly. The most shocking moment came when Commander Paul Jackson allowed his ship to be captured by Zephyrian boarding parties. As enemy soldiers secured his vessel and prepared to take it back to their fleet, Jackson triggered a nuclear self-destruct device hidden in the ship's reactor core. The explosion destroyed not only Jackson's ship, but also damaged 3 Zephyrian vessels that were nearby. More importantly, it demonstrated something terrifying to the alien commanders. Humans were willing to die in ways that made no logical sense, turning their own capture into a weapon. They destroyed themselves, rather than surrender, Dorcon's second-in-command whispered in horror. What kind of species does such things? Dorcon had no answer. In his long military career, he had conquered species that fought bravely, and species that surrendered quickly, but never one that turned defeat into victory through pure madness. The battle continued for 6 hours instead of the predicted one. Human ships appeared and disappeared throughout the asteroid field like ghosts, striking at Zephyrian vessels and vanishing before retaliation could arrive. Some human captains broadcast music during combat. Others sent random mathematical equations that crashed alien computers trying to decode them. Captain Tony Martinez filled his cargo hold with scrap metal and debris, then accelerated to ramming speed toward a Zephyrian battleship. At the last second, he ejected all the metal directly into the enemy's path, creating a cloud of projectiles that overwhelmed their point defense systems. The Zephyrian fleet began suffering casualties they never expected. Ships designed to be invincible found themselves damaged by tactics no military academy had ever taught. Crews trained for perfect coordination struggled against enemies who seemed to have no coordination at all. "Marshal, we've lost 30% of our fleet," the damage control officer reported. "The humans are using weapons and tactics our computers simply cannot process." Dorcon stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His perfect formations were broken, his advanced technology was being defeated by primitive ships, and his carefully planned battle had become pure chaos. "Sir, recommend immediate withdrawal," his second-in-command suggested. "We need time to study these new human tactics and develop countermeasures." For the first time in his career, Fleet Marshal Dorcon gave the order to retreat. As his battered fleet withdrew from the Kepler system, he composed a report that would shake the foundation of the Zephyrian Empire. "The humans do not fight like any known species," he wrote. "They appear to generate new tactics during battle, showing no regard for their own survival and no adherence to logical military doctrine. Traditional strategies are ineffective against their chaotic approach to warfare. The Empire faces a threat unlike any we have encountered before." Admiral Bell watched the Zephyrian fleet retreat and felt exhausted victory wash over him. Humanity had won again, but barely. They had lost 25 ships and over 1,000 brave souls who had fought like demons against impossible odds. "Send message to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them we've proven that human chaos can defeat alien order, but warn them that this war is far from over. The Zephyrians will be back, and next time they'll be ready for our tricks." News of the defeat at Kepler system spread through the Zephyrian Empire like poison in the water supply. On the capital world of Zephyr Prime, citizens gathered in public squares to whisper about the impossible news. For the first time in over 1,000 years, their mighty fleet had been forced to retreat by a primitive species. Lord Commander Kexthun of the Third Noble House stood before Emperor Korthak's throne, his pale blue skin showing the stress marks that appeared when Zephyrians experienced fear. "Your Majesty, the border colonies are requesting additional protection. Some are even talking about surrendering to human forces before they arrive." Emperor Korthak felt something he had not experienced in centuries: doubt. His empire had been built on the promise of absolute security through superior technology. If humans could defeat that technology, what did that mean for his rule? "How is this possible?" the Emperor asked, more to himself than to his advisors. "We have ships that can bend space and time. We have weapons that can destroy planets. How can primitive apes with crude metal ships defeat us?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Amanda Foster, a human xenopsychologist, had been captured during a border skirmish 3 weeks earlier. Zephyrian scientists had brought her to their research facilities to study human behavior and find weaknesses they could exploit. Chief researcher Vel Moore led Amanda through the pristine laboratory complex, his large black eyes studying her with scientific curiosity. "Dr. Foster, we require your assistance in understanding human military tactics. Your species fights in ways that our computers cannot predict or counter." Amanda looked around the sterile white laboratory with its perfect organization and mathematical precision. Everything was arranged according to exact formulas, from the placement of equipment to the height of the workbenches. It was like being inside a machine rather than a place where living beings worked. "You want to understand human chaos?" Amanda asked, sitting down at a table that was positioned exactly in the geometric center of the room. "First, you need to understand what you've lost." Velmore tilted his head in confusion. "Lost? The Zephyrian Empire has lost nothing. We have simply encountered a temporary tactical challenge." Amanda smiled sadly. "You've lost the ability to be unpredictable. Look around you. Everything in this room is perfect, organized, and logical. When was the last time a Zephyrian did something just because it felt right, not because a computer calculated it was the optimal choice?" The researcher considered this question for a long moment. In his 300 years of life, he could not remember making a single decision based on emotion or instinct. Every choice was guided by logic, mathematics, and careful analysis. "Such behavior would be inefficient," Velmore replied. "Why would any intelligent species choose chaos over order?" "Because chaos is where creativity lives," Amanda explained. "When you eliminated randomness from your society, you eliminated your ability to adapt to truly unexpected situations. Humans are unpredictable because we still have that spark of madness that lets us see solutions your computers could never calculate." Meanwhile, human forces under Admiral Karen Wright had begun their first offensive operations deep in Zephyrian territory. Using captured alien technology, human engineers led by Lieutenant Jack Phillips had developed hybrid weapons that combined human creativity with Zephyrian efficiency. The new weapons were unlike anything seen before in galactic warfare. Shields that randomly changed their frequency patterns, making them impossible to penetrate with consistent attacks. Energy weapons that fired in seemingly random bursts but followed complex mathematical sequences that only human intuition could understand. Captain Peter Grant commanded a small fleet of 12 human ships equipped with these hybrid systems. His mission was to strike Zephyrian supply lines and military outposts, causing maximum confusion with minimal force. "Remember, we're not trying to win battles," Peter told his captains during their final briefing. "We're trying to drive them crazy, hit targets that make no sense, retreat when logic says we should attack when logic says we should retreat." Their first target was a major supply depot on the planet Zephyrian. The facility was heavily defended by automated systems designed to repel logical military assaults. But Peter's attack was anything but logical. Instead of targeting the depot's defenses or valuable supplies, human ships attacked the facility's waste processing plant. The explosion contaminated the entire complex with harmless but foul-smelling chemicals, forcing the Zephyrian garrison to evacuate while trying to figure out why humans would waste their ammunition on garbage. Garrison Commander Jexnall filed a report that perfectly captured Zephyrian confusion. Human raiders struck without warning, but their target selection appears random. They destroyed facilities of no military value while ignoring critical defensive positions, unable to determine strategic purpose of attack. Similar raids occurred throughout Zephyrian space. Human forces attacked weather monitoring stations, ornamental gardens, and food processing plants while leaving important military targets untouched. Each attack followed no pattern that Zephyrian computers could analyze or predict. The psychological effect on Zephyrian society was devastating. Citizens who had lived their entire lives in perfect order suddenly faced an enemy that represented pure chaos. Some border colonies began experiencing mass panic attacks as residents imagined humans lurking behind every shadow. On the industrial world of Kexthor, factory workers stopped reporting to their jobs because they feared human raiders might attack at any moment. The fact that humans had never actually attacked Kexthor made no difference to the terrified population. Emperor Korthak found himself facing the first serious challenge to his authority in 500 years. Noble houses that had served the empire loyally for generations began questioning whether the current leadership could protect them from this chaotic human threat. Your Majesty, Lord Commander Vex Turan of the 5th Noble House said during a private meeting, perhaps we should consider negotiating with these humans. If we cannot defeat them militarily, maybe we can find a diplomatic solution. The Emperor's eyes flashed with anger. Negotiate? The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with primitive species. We conquer or we destroy. But privately, Korthak was beginning to wonder if traditional Zephyrian solutions would work against an enemy that seemed to thrive on chaos and unpredictability. Back in the research laboratory, Dr. Amanda Foster continued her conversations with Chief Researcher Velmore. The Zephyrian scientist had become fascinated by human concepts he had never encountered before. Explain to me this word, improvisation, Velmore requested during one of their sessions. Amanda thought for a moment. It's making things up as you go along, like jazz music where musicians create new melodies in real time without following a written score. Velmore's computer implants processed this information and returned an error message. But how can musicians coordinate their performance without predetermined parameters? They listen to each other and respond naturally. They take risks, make mistakes, and turn those mistakes into beautiful music. It's organized chaos. The concept was so alien to Zephyrian thinking that Velmore's mental conditioning began to develop stress cracks. For the first time in his life, he wondered what it would feel like to do something spontaneous, something that wasn't calculated or planned. That night, alone in his quarters, Velmore did something no Zephyrian had done in centuries. He picked up a piece of paper and drew a picture without any plan or purpose. The drawing was crude and meaningless, but creating it gave him a strange feeling of satisfaction that no computer algorithm could explain. Similar cracks were appearing throughout Zephyrian society. Military officers began reporting decision-making, difficulties when facing human tactics. Scientists found their research disrupted by questions about creativity and chaos. Even Emperor Korthak himself experienced strange dreams about what it might feel like to make an impulsive choice. Admiral Wright received regular reports about the psychological impact of human raids. They're starting to break down, she told her staff during a strategy meeting. 1,000 years of perfect order have made them fragile. They can't handle uncertainty. So what's our next move? Asked Captain Phillips, whose hybrid weapons had proven devastatingly effective. We give them more uncertainty than they can handle, Wright replied with a grim smile. It's time to show the galaxy's most advanced empire what real chaos looks like. The stage was set for the final confrontation, where human creativity would face Zephyrian technology in a battle that would determine the fate of both civilizations. Emperor Korthak stood in the command center of the Infinity Gate, staring at the massive weapons control systems with desperate determination. The planet killer was the size of a small moon, carrying technology that could unravel the molecular bonds of entire worlds. It was the Zephyrian Empire's ultimate weapon, never before used in warfare. Your Majesty, we are approaching the human home system, reported Fleet Captain Mordex, his voice trembling with barely controlled fear. Like most Zephyrians, he had been deeply affected by months of exposure to reports about human chaos tactics. The Emperor nodded grimly. Prepare the molecular disruptor. We will end this threat once and for all by destroying their homeworld. Without Earth, the humans will have no center of power. Behind the massive Infinity Gate came the remnants of the Zephyrian fleet, nearly 800 ships that represented the Empire's last hope for victory. But many of the crews were already showing signs of mental breakdown from prolonged exposure to human unpredictability. On Earth, Admiral Susan Parker coordinated humanity's final defense from the orbital command station above North America. She watched the approaching alien armada on her tactical displays and felt the weight of her species' survival on her shoulders. How many ships do we have? She asked her aide, Colonel Brian Foster. 312 vessels, Admiral. Every ship that can fly and fight. including converted cargo haulers and passenger liners. We've also got about 50,000 civilian volunteers who insisted on joining the battle. Susan smiled grimly at that last detail. Only humans would volunteer to fight aliens in converted garbage scows and pleasure craft. It was exactly the kind of chaotic, illogical behavior that had been driving the Zephyrians insane for months. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy flagship," reported Communications Officer Betty Clark. Emperor Korthak's image appeared on the main screen, his pale blue features twisted with rage and desperation. "Humans of Earth, I am Korthak the Eternal, ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately and I will grant you quick deaths. Resist, and I will use the Infinity Gate to slowly dissolve your planet while you watch." Susan looked at the alien emperor with cold determination. "This is Admiral Parker of the Earth Defense Force. Our answer is the same as it's always been. Go to hell." The final battle began with the largest display of controlled chaos in human history. Instead of forming defensive lines around Earth, human ships scattered throughout the solar system like seeds in the wind. Some hid behind asteroids, others used the gravity wells of planets to slingshot themselves at impossible speeds. Captain Tim Rogers commanded a converted passenger liner called the Lucky Star, crewed by retired naval officers and civilian volunteers. His ship had no weapons except mining lasers and cargo manipulators, but Rogers had a plan that only a human could conceive. "All hands, prepare for musical warfare," Rogers announced to his confused crew. "We're going to broadcast every song, poem, and story ever created by humanity directly at the alien fleet." The idea was pure madness, but it worked. Human culture poured across the radio waves toward the Zephyrian ships. Children's lullabies, rock music, love poems, comedy shows, and everything else that made humanity unique. The chaotic mixture of emotions and creativity hit the alien crews like a psychological sledgehammer. Commander Beth Taylor led a squadron of modified fighters in barrel rolls through the asteroid belt, broadcasting human art and literature while firing randomly in all directions. Her pilots painted colorful patterns on their ships and flew in formations that looked like flowers, animals, and geometric shapes that changed constantly. The Zephyrian crews, conditioned for order and logic, began experiencing complete mental breakdowns when exposed to human creativity. On the battleship Void Eternal, the entire bridge crew collapsed in convulsions after being exposed to a human child's finger painting broadcast by teacher-turned-fighter pilot Mary Collins. "What is that?" screamed Navigation Officer Texmar as he stared at the simple drawing of a house with a smiling sun. "The proportions are all wrong. The colors don't follow any mathematical pattern. Why does looking at it make me feel strange?" His captain had no answer. The drawing violated every principle of Zephyrian art and design, yet somehow it conveyed emotions that their advanced minds could not process or understand. Emperor Korthak watched his fleet falling apart around him and felt his own sanity beginning to crack. "Fire the Infinity Gate. Destroy their planet before this madness spreads further." The massive weapon began charging, its molecular disruptors preparing to tear Earth apart atom by atom. But the human cultural assault was affecting even the Planet Killer's crew. Engineering crews reported difficulty concentrating after being exposed to human jazz music. Computer operators found their systems crashing when they tried to process human poetry. In the most desperate moment of the battle, civilian volunteer Martha Brown piloted her converted cargo ship directly toward the Infinity Gate's main weapon, port. Her ship carried no weapons, only the complete digital library of human civilization. Every book, movie, song, and work of art ever created. "This is for my grandchildren," Martha whispered as she activated the transmission array. The entire cultural heritage of humanity poured out of her ship in a concentrated beam aimed directly at the Infinity Gate's control center. Emperor Korthak received the full impact of human creativity and chaos directly into his command throne. Children's drawings, abstract art, experimental music, and improvisational comedy flooded his consciousness all at once. His mind, conditioned for 800 years of perfect order, simply could not handle the beautiful chaos of human expression. "Make it stop," the Emperor screamed, clawing at his head as thousands of years of rigid mental conditioning shattered like glass. The chaos, the randomness, the impossible beauty of it all. Make it stop. The exposure to pure human creativity triggered a complete psychological breakdown. Korthak began seeing colors that didn't exist, hearing music and mathematical equations, and feeling emotions that Zephyrian science had declared impossible. "All ships, cease fire," he suddenly ordered, his voice breaking with sobs. "We surrender. We surrender to the chaos. I cannot fight against something so beautiful and terrible." Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, similar breakdowns were occurring. Crews that had been conditioned to follow orders without question suddenly found themselves paralyzed by the infinite possibilities that human creativity represented. Some laughed uncontrollably at human jokes they didn't understand. Others wept at the beauty of human music that their logical minds insisted was mathematically imperfect. Fleet Captain Mordex tried to take command when his emperor collapsed, but he too had been affected by the cultural assault. "All vessels, withdraw immediately," he ordered. "We cannot fight an enemy that turns our own minds against us." Admiral Parker watched in amazement as the most powerful fleet in galactic history retreated in complete disorder. Zephyrian ships fled in random directions, their crews too mentally disrupted to maintain formation or follow logical escape routes. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender messages from 17 Zephyrian vessels," reported Communications Officer Clark. "Their crews are requesting asylum and protection from further exposure to human culture. The war was over, but not through superior firepower or advanced technology. Humanity had won by being themselves, chaotic, creative, unpredictable, and beautifully insane by galactic standards." 6 months later, Dr. Amanda Foster stood in the new Joint Research Facility on Mars, working with former Chief Researcher Velmore to help Zephyrian refugees adapt to life in human space. Many aliens were fascinated by concepts like improvisation and creativity, though they struggled to understand them. "Dr. Foster," Velmore said during one of their sessions, "I still do not understand how humans function with so much chaos in your minds." Amanda smiled and handed him a box of crayons and paper. "Try drawing something without planning it first. Don't think about what it should look like. Just let your hand move and see what happens." Velmore stared at the art supplies with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Slowly, he picked up a red crayon and made his first truly spontaneous mark on the paper. The simple line sent waves of unexpected joy through his consciousness. "This feeling," he whispered in wonder. "Is this what you call happiness?" Amanda nodded. "That's the beautiful chaos of being alive, Velmore. Welcome to humanity." The galaxy's most advanced empire had indeed trembled before humanity, not because humans were stronger or smarter, but because they had retained something precious that the Zephyrians had lost: the magnificent, terrifying, wonderful ability to be unpredictably human.